My name is Laura Mitchell, and I live in Seattle, Washington with my only son, Ethan. At the time of this story, Ethan was 16 years old, a high school junior who loved video games, soccer, and hanging out with his small group of friends. On the surface, he seemed like a normal teenager, sometimes moody, sometimes full of laughter, always keeping his phone way too close to his chest. I thought I knew my son better than anyone. After all, I had raised him almost single-handedly since his father, David, passed away when Ethan was just 10. Life hadn't been easy for either of us, but Ethan was my whole world, and I believed I was his. But then came the night that changed everything. It was a rainy Tuesday evening in February, the kind of Seattle night where the drizzle never seemed to end, and the cold air slipped in through every tiny crack of the windows. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when I noticed something odd. The house was too quiet. Normally, even if Ethan was in his room, I could hear something. The thud of music through his headphones, the muffled laughter from Discord chats with his friends, or the squeak of his chair as he shifted while gaming. But that night nothing. I frowned and wiped my hands on a towel. "Ethan?" I called down the hall. No answer. At first, I thought maybe he had fallen asleep early. But something about the stillness made me uneasy. I turned off the stove and walked quietly down the hallway toward his room. That's when I heard it, a sound that made me freeze. It wasn't music or laughter. It was the soft sound of sniffling. I hesitated outside his bedroom door, my hand hovering above the knob. Part of me wanted to walk away, to give him privacy. But another part, the mom part, couldn't ignore that sound. So I knocked gently. "Ethan? Honey, are you okay?" There was no answer. Just silence. Something inside me pushed harder. I slowly opened the door and peeked in. What I saw broke my heart. Ethan was sitting on the floor, his back against the bed, his laptop open in front of him. His face was buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Tears slipped through his fingers, falling onto the keyboard. My son, my strong, funny, always independent boy, was crying. "Ethan," I whispered, stepping inside. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" He jumped like I had caught him doing something terrible. Quickly wiping his face, he slammed his laptop shut. "Mom, what are you doing? Can't you knock?" I froze in the middle of the room. "I did knock," I said softly. I heard you." Ethan talked to me. "What's going on?" "Nothing," he muttered, refusing to look at me. "I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. A mother always knows. I knelt down beside him, ignoring his protests. "Ethan, please. I'm your mom. Whatever it is, you don't have to go through it alone." For a moment, he just sat there, silent, his jaw tight. Then suddenly, he let out a shaky breath and whispered, "I can't do it anymore, Mom. I can't keep pretending everything's fine." My heart squeezed. Pretending about what? He finally looked at me, his eyes red and puffy. "School. Friends. Everything. I feel like I'm drowning. Every day I go to school and I just feel invisible. Or worse, I feel like I don't belong anywhere." I was stunned. Ethan had always seemed like he had a good group of friends. But as he spoke, more came pouring out. "They make fun of me sometimes. Not always, not all of them, but enough. About how quiet I am. About Dad not being around. About stuff I can't control. And I just laugh it off because what else can I do? But then I come home, and I still feel like this giant hole inside me. Like I'm just not enough." Tears stung my eyes. I reached out and pulled him into my arms, and for the first time in years, my teenage son let me hold him like he was little again. That night, after he calmed down a little, I gently asked about the laptop. At first he resisted, but finally he admitted, "I was writing something. A story. Actually, it's more like a journal. But I don't want anyone to see it. It's embarrassing." I smiled softly. "Writing isn't embarrassing, Ethan. Writing is brave." He hesitated, then slowly opened the laptop again. What I saw surprised me, page after page of writing. Stories, poems, raw entries about his feelings, about Dad, about loneliness. It was like stepping into his heart. "You wrote all of this?" I asked, astonished. He shrugged, looking down. "It's stupid. Nobody cares. But I cared. more than anything. What he didn't know was that those pages, those words, were the start of something that would change his life and mine. Over the next few weeks, I made it my mission to support Ethan. Instead of lecturing him, I listened. Instead of pushing, I encouraged. I told him his words mattered, that his voice mattered. One Saturday, I gently suggested, "What if you shared one of your pieces? Not with everyone. Just maybe with me." He bit his lip nervously but finally agreed. He read me a short story he had written about a boy who felt invisible until someone finally noticed him. By the time he finished, I was in tears. "Ethan," I whispered, "you have a gift. Your words made me feel everything you felt. Don't ever think that doesn't matter." For the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of pride in his eyes. The real turning point came a month later when his English teacher, Ms. Reynolds, announced a short story contest for the entire school. At first, Ethan refused to enter. "No way. Everyone will laugh at me." But I gently nudged him. "Ethan, you don't have to win. You just have to try. Remember what Dad used to say? Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing it anyway." He sighed, rolled his eyes, but eventually agreed. Weeks passed. He worked on his story late into the night, typing furiously, erasing and rewriting. And when the day finally came, he submitted it. A few weeks later, something happened that I will never forget. I walked into the school auditorium for the awards ceremony, nervous as if I were the one being judged. Students filled the seats. Parents chattered. Teachers prepared to announce the winners. When Ms. Reynolds took the stage and announced third place, then second, my heart raced. Then she said, "And first place goes to Ethan Mitchell for his story, The Invisible Boy." The room erupted in applause. My son, my quiet, reserved, often overlooked son, walked onto that stage, his hands shaking but his chin lifted high. As he accepted his award, I saw something transform in him. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was seen. He was heard. That moment changed everything. Ethan began to see himself differently. His classmates, too. Suddenly, people who had ignored him were coming up to say how much his story had touched them, even the ones who had teased him before. But most importantly, our relationship changed. We talked more. We shared more. He trusted me with his words, his fears, his dreams. And I learned something too, that sometimes walking in on your child at the right moment isn't an invasion. It's a lifeline. Now, years later, as I tell this story, Ethan is no longer that struggling 16-year-old boy. He's a young man in college, studying creative writing. He still carries pieces of his past with him, but now he uses them as fuel to inspire others. And every time he publishes something new, he always calls me first. "Mom," he says, "I want you to read this before anyone else." I smile, remembering that night I walked into his room, thinking I had crossed a line. In reality, it was the night that saved him.